This is Cassie Savoy presenting assignment number 3, Informal Assessment for the PIDP 3230 course, Evaluation of Learning. The informal assessment strategy that I chose is what I like to call a gallery walk. And I'll talk a little bit about how it can be used and the setup and preparation for it. The gallery walk is best used for a review or as a pre-assessment, and it's set up in a way so that students walk around the room looking at photos or questions much in the way that you would walk around an art gallery. If this strategy is used as a review, it's perfect for checking concept retention from previously taught classes. Students get the opportunity to think critically about what they learned in previous classes, activate their recall, and enhance their knowledge scaffolding. It allows for teamwork and collaboration, and they can integrate the knowledge learned from their classmates and apply it to their own knowledge. It also helps them build their confidence in what they're learning and engages them in really great group discussion. If you're using this particular strategy for a pre-assessment, it's great for engaging students and introduces potentially challenging topics. It activates their background knowledge while giving them a chance to make personal connections to the topics. It gives the teacher the chance to monitor what's going on, assess the knowledge that the students already have, and then tailor his or her lesson accordingly. It's also a pretty low-stakes introduction to what could be some potentially challenging topics and gives the students the opportunity to engage in meaningful discussion. The setup and preparation for this strategy is pretty simple. The teacher prepares 5 to 8 relevant questions, whether it's a review or a pre-assessment. They can use various question types such as multiple choice, true, false, agree or disagree, etc. They have to type up or write the questions on paper and post them around the room in a gallery format. The students are put into small groups or partnerships and given a time frame to walk around and answer the questions. Then they're given the opportunity to sit back down with their table groups and compare answers. The teacher then facilitates a whole class discussion by polling the students to find out what they learned in their partner discussions and what answers they came up with. I chose this particular strategy because it has a lot of different advantages and it can be applied in almost any classroom situation, no matter what content you are teaching. The advantages are that it's simple and fast to set up. It can be used for any content or class. It's collaborative, active, and usually allows for pretty friendly debate amongst the students. It's perfect for visual, auditory, and kinesthetic learners and gets the students up and moving around. It increases student engagement and motivation. And because it's not a typical exercise, it's a little bit more of out-of-the-box type of exercise, it makes it more memorable for the students than a regular lecture, and it helps them with their retention. It's also a very modifiable strategy. There are multiple variations. The teacher can choose the length and complexity of the questions. They can make it into a race or a competition, and it can be applied in almost any setting. It's also a very safe space to generate great ideas and for students to have meaningful conversations. A couple of limitations are that some students may feel uncomfortable with this type of out-of-the-box learning, and it can be very challenging to get student buy-in. This means that the teacher needs to very explicitly set out the goals and outcomes of this particular task, explain the instructions very clearly, and make sure students see the purpose of what they're doing. One of the other limitations could be that if you have students who were absent from a previous class, they may struggle to participate in this exercise because they didn't actually get that content taught to them. So you can mitigate this by partnering them up with a student who was present on that particular day. It could also be challenging if you have any students in your class with disabilities or anybody who might be injured. So you have to kind of assess the learning needs of the students in your class and make some modifications to help the students with those particular challenges. I applied this particular strategy in a very last-minute substitute situation, and it took me less than 5 minutes to prepare. I typed out all of the relevant questions in very large font and printed it on brightly colored paper. It was used in a pre-assessment context, so the questions were all related to content that was going to be covered that particular day. I allowed the conversation to roam a little bit because it was a pre-assessment exercise, so I wanted to see what the students actually knew about the topic. If I were doing it as a review, I probably would have come in and guided the students or redirected their attention to make sure that they stayed on task. Once that was finished, I had the students sit down with their groups, compare answers, and check some of the statistics that they were looking at. They were then polled and asked to vote and share their opinions from the discussion questions. And each question that I had them talk about was directly linked to an assessment or engagement strategy that was going to be covered later in the class. So for example, I had the students doing a debate based on one of the topics that was brought up in the questions. They were doing an email analysis and had to produce an email based on some of the topics that were covered in those questions as well. Feedback was provided to the students throughout the lesson on each topic that was taught. So during the discussion with the whole class, they were given feedback, additional content was added, and misunderstandings were clarified. Each assessment strategy was connected to those discussion questions, and feedback was provided as we went along. And the students were also given an opportunity to revisit those original questions and change their answers. At the end of the lesson, they were given a practical application to use the strategies that they learned, and feedback was provided on the submission of that assignment. In conclusion, the information that I gathered from this particular strategy, the discussion results were used to determine how I tailored the lesson, and I got really great insight into the background knowledge of the students and their cultural perspectives. Since I wasn't the primary teacher of the class, I put everything into a summary email and sent it off to the teacher so that she would then be able to use the information that I got from the lesson in her future lessons. Lastly, I want to thank you for your attention in this video, and I really hope that you can apply the gallery walk informal assessment strategy in your classes in the future. Thank you very much, and have a lovely day.